to be our first top 8 competitor, Luis Samuel Deltour on Bait Ramp versus Nam Dang on 4-color Reclamation.
And we see here a handful of some excellent tools for Luis Samuel Deltour, but not a great mana situation. Whereas for Nam Dang, Turn to Gross Barrel, Mystical Dispute with a Reclamation and the payoff cast for it, an excellent start for him. He will also need the land to help make that Gross Barrel tick. Does find a Temple Garden off the top.
And assuming that Deltour can just find one more mana source, a white source preferably, to go with the cards in his hand, you can see why you want to be keeping it. There are so many powerful 3-drops, and there's even 2-mana interaction if this happens, that sort of nightmare scenario of missing your 3rd land drop.
And Nam Dang is going to smell blood here. Either Gus will send that Gross Barrel back to the top, or maybe even to the bottom. Does decide to keep it on top.
And it's so close to free to just keep it on top when Mystical is your interaction piece anyway.
With Island and Forest in play against a Reclamation deck, Shadow the Sky, ain't it? That's not what you want.
Oh.
And now Nam Dang gets to play Teferi Time Raveler with Mystical Dispute back up.
And that's so huge. That Aether Gust can't deal with it. That Dovin's Veto can't be cast. Deltour is under some serious pressure because we see Wilderness Reclamation and Expansion Explosion hanging out in Nam Dang's hand. He's going to close this door fast for a Simic deck.
These bad decks play 29 lands for a reason. You need to make these early land drops. Deltour not doing that. He hasn't cast a spell this game, and I don't think he'll get to.
Whoa,
this Reclamation.
Whoa. He cast an Aether Gust.
Oh, excuse me. One spell.
Oh, excuse you is right.
we value technical accuracy here, the best kind of accuracy.
Ooh, how do you feel about another 5-drop? Does that count?
Mage Phase Reclamation so that we don't have to discard. We could even just Mystical Dispute this.
I imagine we're going to see Dang do that.
But why bother at this point?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Instead, just opting to cycle Shark Typhoon, build a 4/4, and draw the Wilderness Reclamation anyway. Dang isn't under any kind of pressure from Deltour. Just keep him on the back foot. Tag something like a Teferi with this Mystical Dispute.
The only pressure Dang could be under is time pressure, and you see him moving blisteringly fast here to get through this turn. He knows this game is won. And he's looking to keep some precious seconds on his clock in case games 2 or maybe game 3 ends up going a lot longer.
Dang looking at possibly hard casting a Shark Typhoon here.
Not a common line you see, but hey, if you're going to be firing off a big explosion or playing a Mystical Dispute, then hey, that sounds fine.
That is a proper Sharknado if I ever saw one.
We now have 2 unbeatable enchantments here on the battlefield for Nam Dang. We'll play Mystical Dispute on this Uro, get a 3/3 Shark.
And that is going to be lethal with the explosion in Dang's hand. Deltour's seen enough.
Yeah, so moving to sideboarding here for these 2 players, you see Kenrith, a big draw to the white cards for this Reclamation deck, as well as Dovin's Veto. And then for Deltour's side, Mystical Dispute, Aether Gust as well, and then the other copy of Dovin's Veto there too.
Kenrith really just giving a great grindy angle to the Team of Reclamation deck that doesn't require casting spells. This is something we saw David Inglis, aka Tangrams, make use of against an opposing copy of Teferi Time Raveler, where even though he could only cast spells on his main phase, that Kenrith just provided, 10, 20 mana worth of stuff to do?
And Kenrith is the perfect mana sink for Wilderness Reclamation in a way that gets around Teferi, because you're just activating abilities and not casting spells. It can also pressure Planeswalkers, it dodges Aether Gust, and it's not a blue card, so Mystical Dispute is less effective, so really just bobs and weaves around basically everything that you care about.
Right, the only card that really tags it is Elspeth Conquers Death, and that's not even an unfavorable mana exchange all in all.
No, and if you can overload that Elspeth Conquers Death, then you can still find a window to stick Kenrith and do some good work with it.
Alright, so this might be the situation where Nam Dang ends up doing what Deltour did game 1.
Yeah, the show is really on the other foot here. Nam Dang decides to let that Gross Barrel resolve. He knows that there's no card like Wilderness Reclamation on Nightpack Ambusher that he wouldn't be able to counter on for with that Mystical Dispute. Is this going to make one instead? No, he's going to be patient.
What we're going to see Deng do here is likely just cycle one of these Shark Typhoons to really emphasize the need to hit that third land when there's a Teferi Time Raveler down in hand with only a white mana available from Deltour. Deng knows the coast is clear for this Time Raveler, and that's a way to put this game away.
And Teferi Time Raveler, less effective against Band Ramp than against Team of Reclamation, but still a card you're very happy to have in the early game. And for Deltour, when you see Namdang just cycling a Shark Typhoon and then playing this tapped Triumph, that seems like a clear signal that Dang is low on lands.
Right, it's certainly a sign of weakness, if anything.
The Spectral Sailor stays out of the sky in fear of Shark Typhoon.
Dang immediately passes the turn back.
Oh, and Dovin's Veto, a nice pick up there for Deltour. And Spectral Sailor is excellent if you have a surplus of lands to use when you're passing the turn, but Dang, short on lands here. That's just a 1-1 that isn't getting the job done. Might still merit a Glass Casket here, though.
I think at this point, Deltour just wants to make sure that none of his cards are just being chucked in the graveyard during his discard step. You want to make sure that you're actually getting some sort of exchange, and if you think the game's going to go long, getting a Spectral Sailor out of the way now is a fine use of the card.
Another Shark Typhoon cycle there for Dang, who does find that fourth land. And now has to decide if this is the time to attempt a Reclamation. Could also go for Teferi, with Mystical Dispute in reserve.
It's a tough balance because ultimately you want your spell to resolve, but it feels like Deltour is screaming Dovin's Veto.
We could also just pass with Double Dispute and Negate up. Not that we can cast all of those, but Dang has a lot of choices here.
It certainly is a position where, at the very least, Deng will not be under a ton of pressure and will be able to protect himself from any of the threats Deltour's deck presents.
Dang does go for Teferi, does get it Dovin's vetoed. And now, if Deltour has a big threat that can't get disputed, this is the perfect window for it. Sadly, does not. We did see him can't Nissa Who Shakes the World in sideboarding, so less threats that fall into that category.
There is also a point where, looking at both players' hands, there aren't a ton of great options to even use your Mystical Disputes to fight.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is tag an opposing Mystical Dispute at a lower cost.
And that just feels awful if the other person hasn't cast any spells, because then they can just pay the 3. Using Mystical Dispute offensively is so difficult when you're in this sort of holding pattern.
Namdang goes for Uro, and I think he's happy if this resolves, also perfectly happy if this gets disputed.
That'd just be a great exchange if you're in Deng's position.
He does find another Castle Vantress as his sixth land. So after a very mana-light start where he had to cycle a Shark Typhoon, desperately hoping to hit his third land, now getting a slight mana advantage over Deltour. And now we see this aggro control game that we've seen many, many times. Brazen Borrower attempted, and Dang does feel the need to dispute that. He has found a good use for it here. And now here's Uro. But this is an awkward mana situation. You see 2 planes left over there for Deltour, so no dispute backup on this one. So yeah, Dang sees his window. He gets to dispute this. He can untap Land Reclamation.
With a veto of his own as well.
And a negate. Or we can just escape Uro with those 2, it looks like.
I love resolving this Wilderness Reclamation, especially with those Castle Vantresses on the battlefield.
And now, Deltour, under pressure to attempt Elspeth Conquers Death.
This is not going to work.
And here's Negate.
I love leading on the Negate here to try and bait the counter fight.
And even without that land, Dang can go for Kenrith.
And this is why Kenrith is so strong. Look at how it dodges Mystical Dispute.
Right, I guess we're hoping to... we can Petty Theft this, I suppose? Or we can Petty Theft the Wilderness Reclamation. Get that out of the way.
Oh, no. Okay. There was a chance that after Deng floated blue-green that would have been a shot for Deltour to petty theft the Kenrith with that Wilderness Reclamation trigger on the stat, because then Dovin's veto wouldn't have been up.
I don't know if Dang even would want to use the veto there, though. Maybe you keep it up for something like a second Earthsmith Conquer's Death. But finally, there is petty theft on Kenrith.
And at this point, that card's gotten its value. It's drawn a card, and now you can just cast it again next turn.
Deltour loaded up with Uros. He's going to cycle 1. With those 2 basic planes really cramping his style.
Really, this is like the anti-Splinter Twin situation. Tinterslin? Is that the...
Everything either is or isn't a Splinter Twin, and again, you don't know which until you observe it.
And really, this is us just doing our scientific duty of recording that Uro, planes, not Splinter Twin.
Dang draws Bonecrusher Giant for his turn. And is it time for the king to return? It looks like Uro maybe is on the docket too. We can't play both of those this turn, but either one of them threatens to get this game over and done with.
I imagine when there's a Castle of Vantress on the battlefield, there's a point where you are happy to go ahead and just develop the Uro, but Kenrith is such an incredible mana sink when you already have a Wilderness Reclamation on the battlefield that you gotta feel like Dang is just priced into this line.
We can even rumble with that Kenrith if we want to. No Fatal Shark Typhoon.
And now we may even see something else come into play where Kenrith just gains so much life when Wilderness Reclamation gets involved. We're looking at 10 life being able to be added to Dang's life total at this point.
Yeah, the one way that Deltour can hope to steal this game is to apply pressure, and in the face of Kenrith, you simply can't do that.
Yeah, that is just not a winning line.
And Stomp on Brazen Borrow making that even harder for Deltour.
Right, you can't Aether Gusto Bonecrusher Giant. That's not realistic.
It is a legal maneuver.
And you know what? No one can deny that.
Riki Hayashi will not escort you from the building for attempting that. Here's Teferi, which we mentioned before. Teferi typically very good against the card Wilderness Reclamation. Not so much when it's being paired with Kenrith. But Dovin's veto anyway can take that Teferi down. And
huge show of patience from Dang, and that to really show us what he was trying to get out of that Dovin's veto. There are several points where it could have been cast, but it was saved for something more impactful like that Teferi.
And here's Uro, which can gain haste in conjunction with Kenrith.
Hard to imagine that doesn't get the gust.
It does get the gust. But now we're looking at 3 Uros in Deltour's graveyard. He is full up on those. But Dang has him covered really on every axis here.
Yeah, Kenrith is really just going to do everything to beat Uro. Draw more cards. It can outsize it with its green activated ability. Gives creatures haste. Look, this is going to be a swing for 9.
Yeah, we'll attack for 9. We'll get to untap with 9 mana up. We can draw some cards. We can put cannons on our creatures.
How's that for turning the corner?
Yeah, no reanimation available, but hey, it's fine. We have enough options already.
At this point, I believe Deltour really just needs to find something like an Elspeth Conqueror's Death off the top. That is the primary way for him to get back into this game.
And I think it has to be this card. And Kenneth can dig for an answer to the arrow or to that Elspeth Conqueror's Death.
Ketria Triome, not an answer for Dang. This is Deltour's window.
This has to be it. And Ketria Triome is not it.
Spoke it into reality. Both players just dueling Triomes.
We could even just start loading up counters on our creatures here.
It would not surprise me to see that line either. Just making both creatures outsize Uro would be strong.
We're going to do Cycler Triumph for 3 mana, have 2 left over.
Oh, wait.
For a pump, and hold on.
That was a Teferi Time Raveler.
That's a lethal Teferi Time Raveler.
Mystical Dispute actually eating mana here on this Time Raveler could make it worth it.
I think we're going to have enough left over. Perhaps we're just one short? That goes back, and wait, so this is... That's Hallowed Fountain.
Yeah, this should do it now.
That's 3 pumps. Kenneth once, Kenneth twice. And Namdang wins this match 2-0 over Louis Samuel Deltour, who will have to settle for only likely a top 16 finish